We're back. Gridiron 360, Dave and Bill, talking 2020 NFL draft prospects in the SEC on the offensive line. We just ran through the exterior linemen and the offensive tackles, and now we're going to kick it inside, talk a little bit about some of the guards in this draft as well as some of the centers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Important part I think I want to talk about with this, though, is you'll see we're going to separate them by guys that played center in college. It's not uncommon in the NFL to kick these guys, the centers in particular, out to guard, and some of them project there. And not necessarily that they won't come back to center eventually, but that's a critical position, calls out the blocking in all those areas. So you may see these centers, moving out there. In fact, some of them are projected there already. So,
Sure.
but we're splitting them up by what position they played in school.
Yep. So we'll start again, University of Georgia. There's a reason why they had one of the best, if not the best, offensive line in college football. Guard Solomon Kinley from Jacksonville, Florida. He's a redshirt junior. 6'3", 337, 32 and a quarter arms, 10-inch hands. Tell me a little bit about Mr. Kindly.
Okay, you might have seen this guy. He was in a movie. It was called Rocky. He was hanging from a hook in a cooler. This guy is a slab of meat.
I like that.
6'3".
Not really, but it was a great analogy. I do like it, really.
6'3", 337. This dude is a guard if ever a guard was made.
Woo! Hog molly.
All right, so, I mean, the guy's a trunk, just in simplest terms. He's probably about as bulky as it gets. I'm kind of looking to see who's even in his weight class, and there's not a lot of guys. Again, he's going to be that guy that can just move you off the spot. And he actually has a decent amount of athleticism, which is pretty impressive for a guy that size.
He did play tackle a little bit at Georgia.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, there is, he has the ability to, switch it up. But he's a scrappy dude, and I think his natural position where he will best fit in the NFL is going to be at guard. Did have a little bit of a lower leg injury, I believe it was, when he was, maybe it was last year. I can't remember. But you're talking about a guy that, like you said, he's just an absolute load. Now, one of the big names on the defensive side of the ball from the SEC, probably the number one defensive tackle they're projecting, is a gentleman by the name of Javon Kinlaw from South Carolina. If you look at the game tape, even though they lost to South Carolina this past year, Georgia did, but even still, if you look at the game tape, he was matched up against Kinlaw much of the game, and Kinlaw's a power rushing load too, and this guy was able to really create a nice base and a good anchor to hang in there with Kinlaw and not allow him to just abuse Fromm all day long. I think he needs a little more work at kind of keeping everything kind of in front of him and staying, centered on his defensive lineman. He tends to come off the ball outward, and that's great if you're run blocking, but in a pass blocking scheme, you really need to set those feet and anchor down, and sometimes it's a problem. Now, if you're a tackle, your base for your feet is usually going to be a little bit wider, certainly, than a guard. However, and maybe it's from his time taking some reps at tackle, when he is at guard, sometimes he's a little too wide with his feet. Again, a guard doesn't need to have as wide of a base as a tackle. A lot of tackles that, if you're a right tackle, that right leg is kicked back a little bit. Left tackle, that left leg is kicked back a little bit. With the interior linemen, their feet are pretty much, if not parallel, just a hair off. And so, but that tackle kicking his leg back also allows him to open up and get wide on some of those edge rushers that are fast. So that's, I guess that's something that can be learned. I think this is a coachable guy that, again, much like Andrew Thomas, and I even think we said something about Wilson, the fact that, these guys kind of play with a chip on their shoulder. I mean, it seems to be a consummate for the Georgia Bulldog offensive line. So I don't think he's super athletic. Obviously he's not as tall, but he's a great size for a lineman. But he is a load. I think that if he can just perfect his technique of with his footwork and his base and keep it solid and anchor down inside, I think Kinley could start right away. I don't think he'll certainly go in the first round. Guard is definitely going to be, less attractive than a tackle, but it's possible. But I could see him going in 2 or 3 very easily. And, I could see him to a team that needs a guard or an interior lineman and him getting out on the field right away. So, what do we got next, Dave? Let's move on to the next guy. We're going to stay on offensive guard, and we're going to go to the LSU Bayou Bengals and guard Damian Lewis from Canton, Mississippi. He's a senior. 6'2", 327, 33-inch arms, 10 1/4-inch hands.
Yeah, this is another guy that he's a little bit short at 6'2", but not out of the realm. And he's
guard.
He's 327. So he is not little himself. And so his body type, I don't know that it's really a concern. It might appear to be a concern. I'd be a little bit more worried if he was lighter and weaker.
But he threw up 27 reps on the bench. He's not weak.
Yeah, I mean, no. And he is, this is a guy that's just strength and power. Just, again, a little bit like Kinley in that aspect, knows how to move guys. He's if you're really worried about that, I guess, the height thing, then the size thing, then, that might scare you. But here's where it can be a challenge. I mean, the size of interior tackles in the NFL has definitely gone up. I remember when you were 300 pounds, you carried a baby in your gut. And there's guys that are chiseled at 300 pounds, like Aaron Donald is not even 300 pounds, but he's chiseled. These guys their body types look a lot different than 10, 15 years ago. So
can't just be heavy in your weight and just be heavy. Okay.
Yes.
You can't just be like a chubby dubby, with some of that baby fat on you, and you're just you think you're going to use that to your advantage. This is the NFL. You're going to have to tighten that shit up, Jack.
Yeah, and he's not a guy probably at the combine. I saw this mentioned, which kind of makes sense with some of the stats that I saw as far as agility. That's he's not going to wow you there. But the simple fact is, think about this. I mean, he's playing in the SEC, and we have to give the SEC credit. Their D lines, and their D lines that he faces are not a joke.
Nope.
And those are guys that are bringing in some size. This is a guy that's seen, guys like Quinnen Williams and things like that.
Yeah.
So this is a guy that I think is a little bit more of just turn on the tape and see what he does kind of guy, but you can't. I mean, you could not run an offense that was as efficient as that if you didn't get the work up front. And this is one of the guys. And amazing. I think he's a very good prospect. He's not the best.
No.
So
look,
and we're going to talk about him.
We talked about the LSU offensive line in the past. How it's a little bit to be left question when the year started. And, they were good, but were they great? And by the end of the year, they really got cohesive. They won the offensive line team award in college football. This guy came from a junior college, from Northwest Mississippi Community College. He was a JUCO transfer. And here's something I think is definitely worth noting. When he came to LSU, he earned Capital One's academic all-district notice as a sophomore.
Yep.
So he's not an idiot. Okay, and that's it may not be the toughest school in the world, but I like to see that. That means he's got a good head on his shoulders. And again, when you're moving into the NFL, you can't just. It's very hard to do that if you're a freak athlete. Okay, without having the head on your shoulders, you can get away with it sometimes. Maybe not having the best head if you are freakish. This guy's not a freakish athlete, so having a good head on his shoulders is going to benefit him moving forward.
Yep, definitely agree.
Where are we, my man?
Well, let's see. We've done Mr. Kinley.
We are
with
going
Mr.
to
Lewis.
center. Let me run down a couple other names. Actually, just two other guys that I saw that are in the SEC at guard, in particular, that will be coming out in this draft. Sound good, buddy?
Sounds good.
All right. So there are two other guys that that I see in this conference is let's see, offensive guard out of Missouri, Trevor Wallace Sims. Trevor Wallace Sims. I guess that's a Missouri offensive guard, 6'5", 330, so definitely taller and heavier than Lewis, but again, a guard doesn't necessarily have to be that big, but that guy is tall for a guard. And then the other guy I have is Markel Harrell, 6'3", 309-pound offensive guard from the Auburn University Tigers. Okay? We are jumping further inside.
Yep.
And this guy is, let me run down the information. You can talk a little bit about him. Lloyd Cushenberry, also from the LSU Tigers, center from Carville, Louisiana, junior at 6'3", 312 pounds, 34 1/8-inch arms, 10 3/8-inch hands, ran about a 5.27 and 40 at the combine, threw up 25 reps on the bench. Talk about Cushenberry, and especially as it relates to him, to the offensive centers overall in this draft.
Yeah, this guy, again, when we're talking about the center position, there is an incredible importance. That is the quarterback's right-hand man. That guy sets the block for the blocking assignments for the line and has to read that. So there's an intelligence level that has to happen in this area. Now, for interior linemen, I've generally heard three names, two of them out of the Big Ten, and Cushenberry as a group amongst themselves as far as the interior. A lot of people, still want to project him as a center. I can tell you there's a lot of talk about him with my team, the Chicago Bears, who would be looking at him to play guard. And it's very possible, again, these guys you might see not take the center role right off the bat. This guy is basically he's just not movable. He is very strong at the point of attack, and you're not going to get by him. Obviously, talking about the leadership side, a center has to have leadership. He's a big time, I guess athlete or not athlete, but a big time. I would say like workhorse. He's the kind of guy that will work hard and won't be beat. He won't quit on you. Kind of a knock with him is some of his athleticism. Ken, when you get into the center, the center part of the line between the guards and the center themselves, you don't always have the most elite athleticism, though you will see, unlike him, there are some undersized centers that rely heavily on athleticism and have historically. I mean, their center is not generally your biggest, it's generally your smallest offensive lineman, but this guy at 6'3", 312 is not light. So he's, the kind of guy that can do that. I don't know that I project him as a guard, but I definitely think, given the fact that the top three interior linemen are centers by trade coming out of college, I don't see all of them playing center in the NFL right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, considering the situation we're in now with the quarantine,
yep.
How it's one thing to get your hands on a playbook and start looking at it. It's another one actually running the plays and getting reps in.
Yep.
And it is so important for a center to have that down more than any of the other linemen on the team. You know, they got to know what's going on. They're the quarterback of the line. They're calling out the Mike linebacker. They're calling out coverages if they see a stunt coming, or they have a long snap count to kind of uncover some of that stuff. They're the ones calling that shit. So, you know, my whole point is if they're not taking actual reps on the field due to this quarantine, or if that's limited, to get out right away, even if they've played it and are the best their whole career, to get out right away in the NFL and supplant a guy who's been there, a veteran who might know the system already, it might be tough. They might have to work their way in, and this, even without quarantine, that could be tough. But with the quarantine not having the reps, it might be next to impossible.
Yeah, and I mean, again, this guy's got a lot of experience. You know, you could see a move there. I mean, again, even thinking about the Bears, who, again, this is why I've heard this guy's name so much, is they've talked about this guy. It could be another interesting prospect. We talked about this with Thaddeus Moss, but you get a guy like Joe Burrow. This guy's a projected second rounder. I'm not sure that that's where Cincinnati needs to go, but do you create some familiarity? And, you know, do they look at a guy like that potentially? Again, they're going to be picking early, so that might be a little bit of a stretch in the second round. But this is a guy that he doesn't get moved, you know? He doesn't get moved. So can he translate that into guard? He probably have to put on a little bit of weight to move out to the guard spot. Not a tremendous amount, but a little bit of weight to be successful there. But I think, you know, and again, thinking about the Bears could kick. Their starting center right now was started as a guard, and I think he made the Pro Bowl as a guard, so maybe they can kick him back out because they tried a similar experiment. A guy that was kind of similar to him, maybe not in style of play, but the guy the Bears picked up, James Daniels, he was well thought of last year as an interior lineman, very much like the top-tier lineman here, and he snuck into the second round, and the Bears picked him up. They moved him to guard. He played well, not great, but then they moved him to center, and last year he struggled. So they are talking about kicking him back out to guard. So, you know, you just don't know with some of this stuff and whether Cushenberry may fit that way.
I want to read something again from NFL.com, the draft and combine profile that they wrote under his player bio. So I'm, you know, this isn't my words. This is reading. I'm going to read it verbatim because I think this is an interesting piece. For the past 15 years, LSU, where he played, has given the number 18 jersey to players that displayed a selfless attitude and played like a tiger. Cushenberry wore 18. That number was worn by Matt Mauck in 2003, leading them to their first national title in 45 years. And Cushenberry was the first offensive lineman to earn the coveted number this past year. Okay, on the defensive side, Clavon Chase on the top. One of the top-ranked linebackers also wore it. He wore the badge of honor as well his junior year. He garnered first-team All-SEC notice, and leading the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line for all 15 games this past year in the national title run. I say that because you look there, you see tall-ass Joe Burrow in that line setting up, and what name do you see every snap right in front of him? Cushenberry. It's a long name. You can't miss it on the back of that jersey. That sumbitch was there. And he was solid. I mean, solid. Believe me, I watched him in our game, and we have a guy named Isaiah Simmons. Like, he could call out the Mike linebacker all day. Isaiah will flip, grip, and double dip. We'll switch it up, run stunts, move guys a lot like the NFL. You don't see the movement on defenses in college like we do often. There are teams that do it. We do it every freaking snap. In the NFL, it's constant too. This guy it didn't matter where Isaiah lined up. He had the protections called out. They had struggled early, but eventually they got into his zone. They had the protection. He had the protections called out right and neutralized one of the best defenders in the game and one of the top defenders being drafted in this year's draft.
Yep.
You know, look, dude, here's another piece that I also want to share from this. He didn't get a scholarship offer from LSU until the last minute.
Fill-in.
Interesting.
Draft class fill-in.
Look, when you go earn it like that, that's, you know, that to me, that speaks miles, maybe even more than a combine.
Yep.
So, all right, let's move on to the one other center that we have on this board. From Mississippi State, Darrell Williams from Alabama, a senior at 6'2", 304, 32 1/8 inch arms, 9 3/4 inch hands. He ran a 5.23 at 40 at the combine, threw up 23 reps. He ran a 4.76 20-yard shuttle. It's good. It's good.
Yep.
Center, you want to be able to work in those short spaces quick, fast.
Yep. He's he's a guy you look at size. He is on the low end on the size here, between me and 6'2" and only 304. So you look at that NFL pedigree concept of it. He's definitely on the smaller side. Here's what I love about centers. They're usually one of the smartest guys out there.
Absolutely.
The other part about this is that they take on a cerebral part of the game that other people don't have to do.
Oh, yes.
And it requires them learning multiple positions.
Word. Cerebral.
And doing that also gives them the flexibility. I think that's why you see centers that can move to guard. You've seen it when guards get injured. You see the center kick out and then bring in another center because the guards know other roles and other positions. The other good part is being kind of at the tip of the spear of the offensive line is you learn to move left and right. So your versatility can be a lot better. Again, this is a guy that he's a true leader. And I think that's kind of the thing. You look at Mississippi State. I know it has not been a premier program. It's had some struggles.
Well, they do have some premier competition week in and week out.
Yes.
He's in the West.
Yeah, he is. And the thing is, with his athleticism, again, he's only going to face better competition because, again, we're talking about going to the NFL. I don't know, obviously Kim kicking outside is great, but you're not going to have a guy at this size kicking out all that often, and you're doing it more in a pinch. But I just think he's a prospect. Again, I love centers. He's probably a late round draft choice, but considering we're talking about our top interior lineman going in the second round, that doesn't really shock me. I mean, that's just kind of where, if you're looking to find some value, he's going to need some time. This guy's not going to come in and contribute immediately. But you've got some things to work with. And while you're not going to make him taller, you might be able to create some weight without losing some of his athleticism in order to do that. So, this is a guy that's got the potential, to play, 5 to 7 years, maybe more if he really, really, figures something out. And it may, again, be in a backup role or, like a short-term career in starting, but it's a guy definitely worth looking at. And again, I love centers. His challenge will probably be him being able to kick out initially to a guard spot is really doesn't look like it would be in the cards at that size.
Yeah. I love the word cerebral. Perfect. One of the most difficult positions on the field is the center.
Yeah.
Okay. Certainly there is no love lost, and they are never the ones to get the accolades, but oftentimes are ones to get the criticism if it's not going well offensively for a team. But so important to have a great center. So important. And these two guys, I really think Cushenberry too. He could be somebody that goes before an Isaiah Wilson.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and that's the guard for Alabama or
tackle for Georgia.
Offensive tackle for Georgia. Sorry, but good. So I think I got them all, my friend. What do you think? Good, pretty decent there. Pretty decent. We know that linemen aren't always as sexy.
Yep.
But there are some hog mollies here, man. Some beasts, and definitely critical. And like we continue to say the word run over and over, that will really be a telltale sign of when a lot of these guys get drafted. If some start to get picked up, and then there's that run.
Yep.
So we'll have to see. All right, buddy, we're done with offenses. Now we get to move to the hitters on the defense in the SEC. We'll see you next time, as always,
on the gridiron.
See you.